In this episode of Goulet Q&A, I finally am back into a routine. I have a lot of new products to show, and I talk about the future state of Omas. Hey there, Brian Goulet here of GouletPens.com. This is episode number 103, and I'm finally getting back into a normal routine after several weeks of having episode 100 with the shop tour, and then I had an interview with Dante Del Vecchio, and then I did have a kind of a normal episode in 102 last week, except I had to shoot it like almost 2 weeks in advance because I was flying down to Pilot to go and tour their factory in Jacksonville, Florida, Pilot USA. And that was a really cool trip. But now, finally, I'm getting back into somewhat of a routine here. So here I am shooting Q&A, you know, the day before it publishes and everything, just kind of like normal. So I do have kind of a backlog of like new things to show. So I will talk about some of that stuff. But first, I want to recap a little bit. We're celebrating our 6th year of selling fountain pen stuff here at Goulet Pens, so that's pretty cool. I've never been like really huge on birthdays and anniversaries and stuff, but it's always nice to kind of just pause and reflect. It's been 6 years. It's pretty cool. So that's going on. Also, let's see here. What else is going on? I got to look at my notes because there's just been so much. Quasi-normal week. This week, tons of questions. Okay, yeah, I did get like 50 different questions this week, so it was almost overwhelming how many questions I had. So it was a little tough to narrow it down, so that was crazy. I did visit Pilot USA in Jacksonville. So what basically, Pilot in Japan, they manufacture pretty much everything. But there's a lot of assembly and packaging and stuff like that that goes on at different distributorships. So like the Pilot USA is located in Jacksonville, Florida. They've got one in France. They've got, you know, several other distribution centers around the world. Pilot's a pretty large company, as you may know. Very popular brand. So got to tour their whole facility. It's about a 300,000 square foot office warehouse. So it was pretty impressive to say the least. I did shoot some footage down there, and Jenny is going through the impossible task right now of sorting through tons of footage that I shot down there. So we'll be putting that together for you here pretty soon. No, I don't want to commit myself to anything here because it is going to be kind of a lot, and we got the holidays coming up and everything. So yeah, that's going to be going on, but it should be pretty darn cool. It was really neat. Got to see some really nice Mach-E pens, got to meet several different people, give them some good feedback, talk about products that are going to be coming in next year and stuff like that. So lots of cool, fun stuff that I can't really get all into just yet, but it was a very fruitful trip. Really enjoyed getting to see what was going on down there. Next week is going to be Thanksgiving, and I'm going to go ahead and say right now, I'm not going to be shooting a Q&A next week because I'm going to be off, a couple of days. We're actually shutting down our office Thanksgiving and the day after, so we're actually closed for Black Friday. Our site's still up, and you can still buy and browse and all that kind of stuff, but we're not going to be shipping anything, basically because we want everybody to be with their families. So that's how we do it here. We've done it that way basically ever since we've hired people, and so that's the way we're going to keep doing it. So just, you know, we're not doing any crazy sales or anything like that for Black Friday and Cyber Monday and all that kind of stuff. So we just kind of keep it a little bit on the down low, try not to get involved too much into the retail craziness that tends to ensue in this time of year. And then let's see here. So that, you know, is going to mean we're going to be a little bit backed up, you know, shipping things out. But once we come back from Thanksgiving, it's going to be, you know, all out. Then we'll be officially kind of launching into our holiday season, which is our busiest time of year, as it is for most retailers. Let's talk about some products, okay? Got a lot of new stuff that's launched recently. Some of it I may have talked about to varying degrees, so forgive me if I'm talking about anything that you're not particularly interested in, but I just want to mention some of the, most of the things. I may miss a thing here and there, but that's been coming in the last couple of weeks. So we got the TWSBI 580 All in blue, which is kind of like a little periwinkle blue type color. It's not as like Goulet blue like these walls as I'd initially thought it might be, but it's still a really nice blue color. I dig it. So I got one for myself here. And so basically it's the same as the 580 All in other colors. It's just a blue color. So it's got the grip, the piston and, rod, and the piston mechanism that's in aluminum. Blue coated aluminum, so that's kind of cool. So that is coming in varying quantities right now, so it may or may not be available, but I'm just showing it to you anyway. We also got the Kaweco Skyline Sport in purple. Now this is not to be confused with the metallic purple one that you saw in the UK a few weeks ago. This is a different purple. We may be getting the metallic purple. I'm not sure. That one's a little more of like a magenta type color with some sparkles in it. Still plastic, but it's you know, a different shade. This is more of like a darker violet. Very nice. Has been popular so far. So that we have. And then one thing that's really cool on our site, we've recently redone some functionality on our website. We now have in and out of stock notifications at the category page level, so you don't have to click into every product to see it. Oh my gosh, that's such a huge win. It took a while for us to get that, but we finally got it. Super excited. We've had lots of other like small things going on, but another big win that we've had recently is we have basically restructured our whole site so that the pens no longer have a drop-down option for the nib under an individual product. We broke out all the nib sizes into their own separate products, which I understand is like not necessarily as good when you're trying to search for just like one type of pen, because you're going to see all these different products that look very similar. However, the big win that it has had for us is you can now have package sets. So basically, long story short, technical functionality was not there for us to do package sets with the pens when they were all rolled up and you had that drop down option for the nib size. But now that they're their own individual products, we can have package sets together with the option for you to choose which nib size you want. So that's really cool. We've been putting a lot of packages together. It's great in time for the holidays. So you can get you know, a bunch of stuff grouped together. We got daily carry package sets for a lot of our staff here. We got other package sets that we put together, and we bundled them together, and we've got it, you know, at a reduced price over buying the things individually. So great stuff for the holidays. Big win. Go check those out if you haven't seen them yet. We also got in the Pilot Metropolitan Retro Pop pens. You may have already seen these, but 6 new colors of pens in both fine and medium nibs. Very cool patterns on the center band. They've been very popular so far. We have them in, so go check those out. 15 bucks. It's one of the best pens you can get getting into this hobby. Diamine Shimmertastic, we're waiting on it pretty much any day to arrive. Haven't gotten official like tracking notification and stuff, but we are waiting for another shipment of it. This is only going to be the second shipment we've ever had, so it's going to be pretty popular, but be on the lookout for that. Sign up for an email notification on our site for individual color if you're interested in that, and then you'll be emailed as soon as we do have it in stock. I wish I had more specific information for you there, but I don't. And then we also have the Pilot Iroshizuku Mini ink bottle set. So it's this nicely packaged thing, you know, great kind of thing for the holidays too, especially if you want to, you know, have it for anyone in your life, or maybe you just want to treat yourself. So it's nice little 15 ml bottles. They're custom bottles, very cool looking, with Konpeki, Yamabudo, and Tsukushi horsetail brown. So those are cool little bottles, and it's really not, you know, it's around the same price that you would pay for just one full bottle. So it's a pretty decent little set that I think you can check out. What else have I got? The Visconti Opera Master in Crimson Tide with rose gold trim. This is the one that we have available right now. This has the Visconti double reservoir power filler, which you may have seen on a video that we just put up on YouTube. When Dante Del Vecchio was here a couple of weeks ago, we shot a Periscope with him, and he was explaining how that mechanism works. We are working on a very detailed video of this pen that it's going to be one of the longer videos I've ever done, besides Q&A. So that's going to be coming. It's not a cheap pen, $995, but I'm going to have a video that covers everything, so you're going to get your viewership's worth, or whatever you want to call it. We are going to have a black rhodium trim version of that pen that's going to be coming, as well as another whole color of blue swirl that's going to come with a Visconti blue crystal inkwell. So that will be coming for this holiday season here in the next couple of weeks too. So you may have already seen that one kind of pictured out on the internet. We are going to have that here too. We're just waiting for them all to come in. Lots of stuff. Also, we just got a new pen that I'm not sure when we're going to have the actual shipment, but it'll be in the next few days if we don't have it already. The Conklin Duragraph in this kind of flecked and striped blue color. This is an exclusive that we're going to have at Goulet here through the holiday season. So I think you can check this out. It's going to be the same price as the other Duragraphs and all the same nib options. So if you were interested in the Duragraph and you just didn't like the old colors and you like the blue, definitely check this out. Pretty excited about that one. Also, we have the Visconti Millenium Arc, which is the arc filler. So it's similar to the Conklin Crescent filler, if you're familiar with that mechanism at all. This pen has been around for a while in older colors, but this one in particular is the Blue Typhoon, which is a color that originally wasn't going to be offered on this pen, but basically the other blue swirl that they had, they ran out of quantity like really soon. So they decided to come out with another blue to help kind of fulfill it. It's a different looking blue. It's not as pearlescent. It's more of a kind of an opaque, but just a blue with kind of a light blue swirl in it. Looks very nice. And another thing I wanted to point out too, this is something I don't even have yet, but if you're interested in, let me know in the comments or whatever. This is a Visconti Mosquito filler. And basically this is designed for the tubular nib, Smart Touch nib that they have on the Millenium Arc here, as well as the Opera Metal and some other various pens they've had over the years. But it fits around the nib like so. It's rubber lined on the inside, and it allows you to get all the way down into your ink bottle and fill that way. So it works with the Millenium Arc, and it works with other pens that have this tubular nib, and then it keeps your whole grip section clean and everything, and it allows you to basically be able to get down into your ink bottle. So if you're interested in that, it's something that I'm playing around with right now. I don't have a price or anything on it yet, but it won't be too insane. It's not going to be a bargain, but it's a very kind of custom thing. So if you're interested in that, I'm curious to know. Whew. Okay, other things that are going to be coming soon. We're going to have our winter edition of the Edison Nouveau premiere. I know I'm taking forever to get into the questions this week, but just got a lot of stuff backed up here. We're going to have that. Also, Field Notes just announced their new winter edition, which is called Snowblind, which is white, and then when you expose it to UV, it turns blue. So that's kind of neat. I don't have those yet. I haven't seen them, but it should be kind of cool. There's also a couple of other Visconti pens that are going to be coming out fairly soon. They just keep on coming with them. I know I've been talking about Visconti a lot recently, because we've been carrying their pens, you know, so we had like their regular edition stuff that we've been kind of launching, but then they've also been coming out with all these new pens. So it's kind of like, okay, Brian G is like, are you Visconti crazy or what? Well, it's just like a lot of the new products coming out have happened to be Visconti. So I'm trying to talk about other things too, but they just have been coming out with a lot. So, but they're gonna have a couple things I'm not gonna talk about yet, but they're gonna be coming soon. It's gonna be pretty neat. And then the last thing is the TWSBI Vac Mini. A lot of you are probably curious about that. It's been like a long time coming. Finally, we're gonna have them pretty much like right at Christmas time. Really not much beforehand. I think TWSBI has said they're going to launch it December 15th. We're on the other side of the country from them, so it usually takes a little while to come to us. They launch it on their site and then they ship it to us, and we usually have it about a week later. So we're gonna have it pretty much like right at Christmas. So, you know, at least that's something. They're gonna sell out. I can just tell you that right now because they're so highly anticipated. So just kind of get it wherever you can, honestly. All right, that's it for new products. I need to move on. I'm 13 minutes into the video already, pretty much, so this is a little crazy. All right, Brian, geez. Here we go. All right, getting into the questions for this week. I'm gonna start out with pen and writing questions. The first one is from Lucas M in an email. I'm looking for a next level pen, $400 max, and I was wondering what you would recommend. I already have a Pilot Vanishing Point and a Lamy 2000. But I recently came into some money, and I'm looking to acquire a pen that is still suited for a daily writer, but has a full-size nib, unlike those previously mentioned. Any thoughts? Okay, so you're looking for a next-level pen like this level. So I have a video called, you know, 7 next-level pens, which is pretty interesting if you like the intro on that one. But that one I focus on pens that are like the sub $100 range. You know, basically like if you have a Metropolitan or Safari, kind of what's up from there before you get into the gold nib pens. Lucas, here you're asking me about basically gold nib pens. Okay, so kind of that up to $400. That's like almost like the next level for the most part, but you know, everybody's got a different idea of what next level means. So I'm just gonna kind of go with what you defined, which is like entry-level gold nib on up through like, you know, decent range nib. So you're asking me specifically about full-size nibs. So I know there's some like, you know, the Pilot E95S and Stargazer and stuff like that. Those don't really have like full-size nibs. So I'm going to talk about larger nibs here. So some of them that I think are worth pointing out. First off, these two are fantastic. So doesn't have your full-size nibs. You already have these pens, but for everybody else out there watching this, Lamy 2000, Pilot Vanishing Point are like go-to next level pens with gold nibs. Pilot Custom 74, easy recommendation. I didn't pull it out of my pack, but I have it right here because it is in one of my daily carries. So I have one of my favorite pens of all time, if not my absolute favorite. I have so many that are like tied, but this one has special significance to me. Blue Pilot Custom 74 with a medium nib. Love it. Highly recommend it. Highly recommend it. Also worth checking out the Pilot Custom 823. Now this is a vacuum filling pen. It's a little more expensive than the Custom 74 and the Vanishing Point and stuff like that, but it's got a little bit bigger nib, higher ink capacity with the vacuum. It's got this, it only comes in one color, the amber with the gold trim there, but fantastic pen, writes really nicely, writes very similar to the Vanishing Point and the Custom 74. The bigger nib doesn't particularly mean it writes much different, but I get it, like you hold your pen in a different place and there's other benefits to having a bigger nib. Also, the Pilot Metal Falcon. Now you can definitely go with the resin Falcon, which is kind of is definitely considered like a next level pen, but given that you have a higher price range, I'm going to go ahead and throw the Metal Falcon in there too. It's a heavier pen. It's got the same nib as the Resin Falcon, so it's definitely more expensive. It's the body that you're buying there. But I like the weight and the heft of the Metal Falcon better. Plus it takes a Con 70 converter, which has a higher ink capacity, so it's kind of nice. If you got a little house money to throw around, that might be worth it. Other pen that I'll throw into the mix is the Omas Ogiva Cocktail. It's the same body basically as the Ogiva Alba that we had last year. This is the Blue Angel one, which I personally love. It's got a nice number 6 size nib, ebonite feed, piston filling, looks really nice. Now you might be thinking to yourself, I've heard some stuff about Omas recently and I'm going to address that in a future question, but definitely a pen that's like really kind of pushing your upper range there, but it's still by $5 eking through the line there. It's $395 for that pen, but it's definitely worth consideration. So there we go. And just for everybody else kind of watching this video, I have corresponded with Lucas over email here a little bit, and I think he ended up settling on Custom 74, which I think is a great choice. So, but any of these pens I would highly recommend. It's really just a matter of personal preference and budget and stuff like that. It's going to determine what's going to be the best. All right, Jerry Tanta 13 on Twitter asked, are there any other converters compatible with the Pilot Vanishing Point? The ink capacity is killing me. Okay, I get it. I really do. So when you pull the Vanishing Point nib out, the nib unit, so basically what's going to come on there is your Con 50 converter, which has this little metal agitator. And it's not a huge ink capacity in here. It's about 0.6 milliliters in this thing, which is about the size of a standard international short cartridge, which is fine. It's very adequate, but it's definitely on the lower size capacity, whatever you want to say, pretty much any pen that you would get out there. So there are a couple of options for you. Oh boy, this is inked up and I just dropped it on myself. I'm okay, it didn't stain. So a couple options for you. First off, you can go with the Con 20, which is this squeeze converter, metal housing. It's not clear, you can't see your ink level in it, so that's a thing, but you can't really see your ink level in here anyway. Oh, I did splatter a little bit of ink. Let me wipe that up real quick. Ugh. It happens to the best of us. At least I didn't drop it on the floor, right, and ruin the nib. Anyway, so you can use this. It does take a little bit of force to push it down in there, but once you do, it'll be the same size and everything and work just the same as the Con 50 will. So this will increase your ink capacity by close to 50% if you get a full filling on this thing, which can take a little practice, but is relatively straightforward to do. Another option for you too is to use the Pilot cartridge, the Pilot Namiki ink cartridge, which one comes with your pen, so you can use an ink syringe and refill that, or just use cartridges if you are okay with the ink options that Pilot has. This will be the same ink capacity. It's about 0.9 milliliters as the Con 20, so you get a higher ink capacity here than you would in your Con 50. Both of those will be pretty easy solutions for you, pretty reasonable to do, and you get a higher ink capacity in your Vanishing Point without having to do too much extra stuff. All right. Dropping pens everywhere today. All right, got some ink questions. This is from Grant G on Facebook. I'm an illustrator and a waterproof black is a necessity in my fountain pen so I can watercolor over the line work. Are the Diatramentis document inks waterproof? If so, how do they compare to the Platinum Carbon Black or Super 5, which has been my favorite? Okay, Grant, honestly, all of these are great options for what you're looking to do, really. Any of them you could do really well with. Now, all of them are more expensive than conventional fountain pen inks. These are more complicated inks to make. They use more expensive materials, so they're all more expensive. But They do work really well for what you're trying to do. So if you're trying to do line work and then you want to like wash over top of it or do mixed media or whatever it is, all of these are going to be really steadfast. They're formulated a little bit different. The Platinum Carbon Black is a pigmented ink, so it sits more on top of the page. So it's going to stay a little bit darker, a little bit truer to its line. Both the document inks and the Super 5 inks absorb a lot more into the paper. So you're going to get a little more bleeding. Excuse me, the dry time is actually, well, dry time on all these is going to be pretty decent, but it's going to spread a little bit more. It's going to be a kind of a flatter color. So really the Super 5 and the Diatramentis document inks are pretty similar in terms of their performance, honestly. The colors are different for sure. And I actually used to carry the Super 5 inks here. They were fairly popular, but we just weren't able to kind of meet minimum orders and stuff that were required to be able to import them in, and we had to drop them because the demand just wasn't quite there. So, you know, if you can still get them, great. I would highly recommend them. But the Diatramentis document inks by far are more known in kind of the art community for this purpose. And then Platinum Carbon Black is like everybody's go-to for a black ink. So all of these are going to work really well, honestly. Janet E on Facebook says, I recently bought a Platinum Century 3776 Châtre Bleu with a medium nib. I inked it up with Noodler's Blue Eel, but it seems to put down a lot of ink. It's very wet. I know that Noodler's Eel inks are lubricated, and this could be the issue. Is there a less wet blue that you would recommend? Yes. First off, great choice of pen. Love that blue, and great choice of ink matching the ink to the pen. Honestly, just want to say that. So Blue Eel, yes, it is a lubricated ink and it is a very wet ink. I think you could go with just about any other blue and it would not write as wet as this one, except maybe Aurora Blue. That one's pretty wet as well. But really, you pretty much have your choices. Now, this is like a nice mid-range royal blue that you really have a lot of choices. The most obvious one would just be straight up Noodler's Blue. It's really identical to Blue Eel, it's just not lubricated. And I love that ink, so Noodler's Blue would be a good choice. Noodler's Liberty's Elysium too. If you want kind of that little water resistance component to it, you can check that one out. That one's very similar in color as well. A little bit drier though than Blue Eel. Some other ones you could check out, Pilot Iroshizuku Konpeki. It's a little bit lighter of a blue, but is going to have not be as wet. Have not be as wet, I just said that. Grammar. Private Reserve DC Super Show Blue. I'm trying to go fast here to make up for my long intro, and I'm going too fast. Private Reserve DC Super Show Blue tends to be a little on the wet side, but might be something nice, deep saturated blue similar to that, so it might be worth checking out. Or Lake Placid Blue is another good one, or they have like you know, American Blue and stuff like that. So the Private Reserve has a lot of good, true like mid-range blues you can check out as well. Hopefully that helps. I actually have a couple of paper questions this week. Haven't gotten paper questions in a long time, so I took 2 of them just because I was like, oh, I need paper. All right, Winnie U on Facebook says, I love pretty stationery, and I wonder if Clairefontaine carries anything like that. I have both tablets and envelopes I get through you, and love the feel of it, but would sometimes like something fancier. Okay, so the fancier stuff that you can get from Clairefontaine. And yeah, I totally didn't pull the stuff ahead of time. But what kind of show would this be if I didn't forget to pull some things? Okay, Clairefontaine Triumph, and thankfully I have it right here because I use it for my own personal correspondence on a pretty regular basis. So Clairefontaine Triumph, which of course I have chosen defective pads for myself, which don't show particularly great, but whenever we get damaged products and stuff like that, I will take it for my own personal use, and usually not try to show it in a video like I am right now, but this one's okay. Clairefontaine Triumph, love this paper, it is fantastic. It's not particularly fancy looking, it's just white paper. There's a lined and unlined version. This is the lined. Ta-da! And if you buy the unlined version, it comes with 1 sheet of lined paper, so you can put it underneath your blank paper. That's a great way to make it look like you can write straight across, even though you're not. So if you take a lined paper, put it behind the paper you're writing on, you can use it as a guide, and then when you pull the sheet out, it looks like you can write really straight across on a blank sheet, even though you've cheated. So I do that a lot. But yes, that is great paper, 90-gram white paper. It feels amazing when you write on it. It's really ink resistant. And it feels really good in the hand too, but it doesn't necessarily feel like custom stationery kind of stuff. If you want that, then I would recommend Gilalo Verge de France. And this stuff, Yeah, you gotta love my French accent, right? This stuff it comes in several different colors, but it's more of a lined paper. It's not lined in terms of you know, having lines across it like this, but it is more of a laid paper. So it has more of a texture to it, and kind of you can get it in some off-white and other colors. So that's kind of cool. Now you're thinking to yourself, well, that's not Clairefontaine. Well, that's true. It is owned in the same family of brands, though. It's made technically in a different, you know, place and everything, but it's still owned under the same umbrella of companies at Clairefontaine and Rhodia and all that. So, and J. Herbin and all that. So, you know, it is still kind of within that family, so I just want to point that out. Clairefontaine does have a line of paper called Pollen. That's where they've like a lot of card stock and some of the other kind of stuff. They have note cards and things like that. I don't really deal a lot in that world, but look up Clairefontaine Pollen and you can see what some of your options are there. There's other retailers that get more into like the paper and stationery type stuff, so you might have some options there. But that's what I have for ya in regard to your specific question. All right, Kelli M on Facebook asks, what's the difference between Clairefontaine 1951, classic, and basic notebooks? Okay, great question, and I'll cover that right here. Funny I should mention cover, segue. Basically the difference between all of these, hey, basically, pun, man, I'm just like on it today without even realizing it. The difference really is the covers and the different formats and stuff, but that's about it. The paper is gonna be the same in all these. Great 90-gram white Clairefontaine paper. It all performs really well. Love it. Clairefontaine paper is pretty much the ultimate for me. But the basic is kind of this somewhat textured, you know, cardboard-like, not necessarily like chipboard cardboard, but it's a you know, it's a flexible cover, but it's a little more of a rugged kind of cover to it. So that's where the name basic kind of comes from. It's meant to look a little more, well, basic. And these, they have two versions. They have a, well, actually, no, they do have a wire bound, don't they? Yeah, I don't know. I haven't brushed up on every single option for all these notebooks because there are a lot of them. But basically, you're kind of limited in your formats you can get for these. Just a couple different sizes. They have a couple staple bound, a couple cloth bound, a couple wire bound. Not boundless options, and it's pretty much just lined, I think, in those. The classic is going to be a little more bright and vibrant colors. Similar flexible cover. It's a little bit thinner than the basic, a little less durable, I would say, in general than the basic. The basic is meant to be a little more rugged, but this is like, I mean, the classic is where you have the most options for Clairefontaine. All different kinds of rulings, colors, sizes. The one thing I will say though is that they don't ship them out one color at a time. They ship them in a mixed pack, so we're not able to sell them individually by the color. So there's maybe 4 to 6 different colors depending on the type of notebook you're getting, so it is random. We do kind of take requests based on preferences. If we're able to, if we have them, we'll do that, but not always able to meet that. So just realize that's kind of one bad thing about the classic. Still great paper, staple bound, cloth bound, wire bound, you name it, top staple bound, you know, lots of different options for you there in different sizes and everything. So that's where you got the most options. And then the 1951 is basically the same thing as the classic, except it doesn't have a shiny gloss cover like the classic does. You can see that it's kind of reflecting on the light there. This is a more of a matte finish, kind of like the basic one, except it's got more of a retro look. So that's the whole 1951. They're kind of going back to what their design was back then. So it's some interesting colors, definitely a retro look, but the paper inside and everything's going to be exactly the same. So you got some options there. Not a whole ton of 1951 formats and options available, but if you happen to like that particular format and you want that cover color, by all means, go for it. It's going to be the same great paper in all these notebooks. All right. Got a couple of personal questions. No, just one personal question. Okay, here we go. So this is from Winnie U on Facebook. I notice on your bookshelves you have multiples of certain books. Do you share them with staff or something else? Yes, so I do have my bookshelf here, and I do have some multiples, as you can very well see. Some of them are next to each other, others are kind of scattered, so I'm noticing right now. I do have some multiples, so right down here I have QBQ, that's a good one. This one I read actually in our company meeting over a series of a couple of months. Actually read this to the entire company, and then basically whoever wanted a copy, I bought 20 copies or whatever, and whoever wanted a copy, I just gave it out to them. So if they wanted it. It's a really good book about personal accountability. Highly recommend it. Pretty easily consumable. So that's a good one. How to Win Friends and Influence People. That's a good one that I've had lots of times. Entree Leadership with Dave Ramsey. I've attended several of his events, listened to his podcast, book, all that kind of stuff. Consumed a lot of his material, and it's very good. We've implemented a lot of stuff there. So I have multiple copies, partly because of all the events I've attended, but also because I want to give a copy to everyone who's willing to read it. So I offer it up all the time. Boundaries for Leaders with Dr. Henry Cloud is another really good one. I highly recommend that. He also wrote Boundaries, which is more of a personal book about relationships and stuff like that. Boundaries for Leaders, a little bit different content, but kind of similar concept. Really good, highly recommend that. So that's really kind of like for my leadership team. Pat Lencioni, The Advantage, that's his kind of capstone book to a lot of his other books, like 5 Dysfunctions of a Team, Death by Meeting, a lot of other really, really good books that I've read of his. So that's a really good one. I enjoyed that one very much. And so basically my whole leadership team is reading that. So I have several copies of it. And I think those are the main ones that I have multiple copies of. Yeah, at least at the moment. But honestly, I loan these books out to whoever wants to read them. I have lots of others. Another good one, if you've heard of the 5 Love Languages, there's a good one called the 5 Languages of Appreciation in the Workplace. So that's done by Dr. Gary Chapman, not Harry. Gary Chapman, as well as another gentleman whose name is slipping my mind at the moment, but that's a really good one based off similarly like the 5 Love Languages, except it's a little more in the context of the workplace. So that's a really good one. I have multiple copies of that are currently out and about. I don't have multiple copies on here, but it's kind of like my little library. I love books. They're extremely impactful for me and have influenced my leadership development to a great degree, as well as a lot of strategic things I've done in this business. So I am always happy and willing to loan out books or give books to others who I could see would benefit from it. And so that is just kind of my style, as well as talking for long periods of time. All right, I got a business question, which I don't have like one specific person that has asked this question in this way, but I've kind of just taken a lot of the hubbub on Fountain Pen Network, as well as various emails and correspondence and tweets and stuff like that I've gotten. So this is kind of coming from several people. Basically, what in the world is going on with Omas? Okay, so you may not be aware right now, but you may be aware and you may be kind of curious. So I don't want to sensationalize the situation with Omas right now because it's already being sensationalized a little too much. So officially, the word that I've gotten from Kenro, which is the US distributor for Omas, Omas is undergoing an ownership change. They're not sure who the company is being sold to right now, but basically the parent company that owns it does not want to own it anymore. There are several different offers in the works, and they're working all of that out right now. Now, there is all kinds of speculation out there about what's going on, what's causing it, and so on. Now, to a little bit of context, Omas is owned by a holding company in China. So it's Olux. They're basically, they do a lot with jewelry and things like that, a lot of luxury goods out of China. They're a huge company. And they own most of it. Louis Vuitton owns about 10% of it or so. Louis Vuitton used to own, I think, all of it, if not most of it previously. They bought it for a while and then they sold it to, most of it to this Chinese company. So they're still doing their thing in Italy. Things have pared down a little bit for them over the last couple of years, and you can read some stuff. So there's some Italian newspaper articles and stuff like that are coming out speculating all kinds of different things. I really can't speak to the speculation very much. A lot of them, are saying like they're being liquidated and all this kind of stuff. That's not the case. So I've gotten confirmation that some of the newspapers are speculating as early as Monday earlier this week, they would be liquidated, and that's obviously not happening. I've talked to Kenro and I'm like, guys, what's going on there? They said, look, they're still shipping out pens, they're still making pens, they're still taking payments, and they're still you know, taking repairs and shipping out repairs and stuff like that. Basically, they're operating as normal. It's just kind of the parent company that's negotiating the sale of Omas. So it's uncertain at this point, as far as from an ownership perspective, what's going to happen to Omas. And undoubtedly, whoever ends up owning Omas, it's going to influence the direction of the company to some degree. I just can't speculate what that's going to be. So the official stance is, yes, they're undergoing an ownership change. It's not clear yet who the new owner is going to be, but as far as Omas in general, it's business as usual until there's word otherwise. So full warranty on everything, all that kind of stuff in the foreseeable future. Now, obviously, I'm not a dummy. I know, like, if there's any kind of uncertainty as far as ownership for the long term, you're going to speculate, are my warranties going to be serviced? Should I buy this pen? You know, we got cocktails right now that are out. Should I buy these pen? I'm going to say, like, I can't tell you that it's going to be yes or no or whatever. I can't predict the future like anyone else. So I would fully understand if you didn't want to buy an Omas right now. And, you know, I probably shouldn't be saying that as an official retailer, but I'm just being as a human being, like, yeah, I could understand if you didn't want. On the flip side, a lot of you are probably going to say, oh my gosh, I've always wanted this pen. If there is any uncertainty, if anything does for whatever reason end up happening and I can't get these pens anymore, the value of the pens is probably going to go up down the road, you know, because they're going to become vintage, and then they're going to be harder to find. So I can see it going either way, honestly. So, but as it is right now, I'm just really not trying to feed into the hype. I'm just trying to tell you what I know and kind of what I can officially, you know, say based on actual facts. But basically, it's business as usual. So just take it and interpret it in whatever way that you feel comfortable, and then move forward with your kind of purchasing decisions. I just ask, please, like, don't feed into the hype a lot. There's all kinds of crazy hype and speculation going on, and people are speculating about other companies and all this other stuff, and it's all getting kind of mixed in and getting blown out of proportion. So just kind of, you know, here's the facts that I have as of right now. All right, and I'm going to close out with several different troubleshooting questions, actually. This first one is from Brittany S on Facebook. Which feed materials are sensitive to which reagents? For example, plastics, ebonite feeds against bleach, ammonia, soap, water, etc. Which cleaning agent will work best for pigmented inks? Okay, so kind of a two-parter question here. Let me start out with water, because that's the easiest one to address. Specifically in your question, you asked about warm water. I didn't say that just now, but that's what you said, Brian. Sweet name, by the way. Warm water is okay, but don't go with hot water. You gotta be really careful here. I like to say lukewarm water. So basically, especially if you have ebonite feeds, if your water is too hot, it could end up actually warping the feed, and that would be bad. Or other parts of the pen, especially if you have vintage pens and you're cleaning it out and you have, you know, shellac and other things that are used to kind of hold the pen parts together, and you're using hot water, that can actually melt the shellac and cause the pen to pretty much come apart. So that you don't really want to do. So I never recommend using hot water. Even though technically hot water cleans better, it can also cause damage to your pen. So I never recommend hot water. Lukewarm water is best. As far as using chemicals and stuff, so the lightest step from just using plain water is dish soap, you know, like a liquid detergent, you know, Dawn type dish soap. It's pretty gentle, honestly. You know, mix it in with your water, make sure it's diluted. Don't just go dumping soap straight on the pen unless it's really bad. But it's really not going to cause any harm to your pen. It's pretty safe stuff. You know, I guess I can't guarantee everything in all situations, but you're going to be pretty safe with that. So try that, and just using soapy water. That will usually do a pretty good job. And honestly, everything I'm saying right here kind of applies to pigmented inks as well. So I'm just kind of lumping these kind of two things together. Ammonia is kind of like the next one that you could do. Honestly, ammonia, you want to dilute it. You don't want to use straight ammonia. You know, ammonia is a general like household cleaner, so it's pretty safe on a lot of different like countertops and surfaces and stuff like that. I wouldn't recommend, you know, soaking it for long periods of time in a heavily like ammonia solution. You're going to want to dilute it pretty good if you end up doing that. And the thing you want to be careful about with ammonia is you don't want to use it for an extended period of time on aluminum, because it will react with aluminum. So it's okay if you need to like just flush out a pen like For example, if you have the Lamy logo or something like that, that's aluminum. So you can flush it out and stuff like that, but I wouldn't soak the aluminum parts in it, okay? And you want to make sure it's pretty well diluted. Then you're talking about bleach. Bleach gets kind of weird. There's certain inks, for example, the Noodler's Base Day series, that bleach is what cuts through that ink. So bleach is good in that situation, but bleach is definitely a harsher chemical that you want to be careful with. Specifically, bleach and stainless steel don't play nicely together. So if you have a pen and you're cleaning it out, I would not recommend soaking stainless steel parts like nibs, center bands, anything like that. Any really metal components, I wouldn't soak that in bleach. I just wouldn't do it. It's okay to clean it out, and I would make sure that it's, again, heavily diluted, 10% probably, into water. So then, and we're talking household bleach. Bleach, there's like industrial bleaches and stuff like that. My father actually power washes houses. I did that for a couple of years coming right out of school. And when you buy like industrial level bleach, it's like a 40% bleach solution, and it's really, really caustic, and can, you get industrial bleach on your fingers and it'll start to eat away your skin in a matter of seconds. It's pretty nasty stuff. So it's really kind of harsh, and you want to make sure that you don't use that unless you really need to. So even in like a base day blue type situation, which is where a lot of this conversation comes out, bleach will cut through it pretty well, but what you want to do is heavily dilute it, and you want to make sure that you're not doing that like every day. If you're using an ink like that needs that degree of chemical to clean out of it, it's better to just kind of dedicate one pen to it and use it and only clean it out on a less frequent basis with that. It's going to kind of leave a stain on it, but it's not causing like a permanent harsh stain that will clean up with the bleach, but you just want to make sure you're not doing that all the time, because it's not the safest thing to use necessarily. For pigmented inks, I don't think you need to go with bleach because it's going to be pretty impermeable to that, but I think the most important thing with the pigmented stuff is you want to make sure that you're not leaving it to dry out in the pen. That's really where it causes a problem, because when it dries out completely, those pigments kind of adhere to your feed and stuff like that. It's just not fun to clean that out. What really helps in that situation, using like a pen flush, like a Goulet pen flush, something like that's been developed, or any of the things I've talked about here. I wouldn't worry about bleach, but any of the soap or ammonia can help. But then if you have a physical object to help to clean, if you have a pen that you can disassemble, for example, a Noodler's pen, and you can pull the nib and feed out fairly easily, and you have an old toothbrush, and using like a cleaning agent and then scrubbing it with the toothbrush, if you get into a situation where the pigmented ink is like dried up in the pen, that's where it's best. But honestly, your best bet for cleaning a pigmented ink out of a pen is preemptive maintenance. So making sure that you're not letting it dry out in the pen, that you're cleaning it out regularly, that you're using the pen regularly. Those inks are great, but they are a little higher maintenance than typical fountain pen inks. So an ounce of prevention is worth a pound of cure in that case. And then lastly, I want to address, this wasn't something you specifically asked about, but I do get asked about it from time to time, using an ultrasonic cleaner. An ultrasonic cleaner is basically like what you see at jewelry stores, where you just kind of put it in, it like zzz, like vibrates. That can help with certain pens, specifically if you have dried up old ink that can kind of clean it out. And you can use cleaning agents, for example, soapy water or something, in combination with an ultrasonic cleaner, and that'll help out. You just got to make sure that any of these cleaning agents that you're using, that you're flushing it with clear water after the fact. So any of those I think will help you out. All right, next question is from Sandro C on Facebook. Can a fountain pen nib be too smooth? On rhodia paper, I have a couple of high-end pens that seem to skip because the nibs are ultra smooth. In particular, a couple of Viscontis I own. They actually do better on cheaper paper. Any resolution to this issue? Well, I guess you're just gonna have to use cheap paper the rest of your life. I'm kidding. I'm very kidding. So yes, usually when you have a pen that writes ultra smooth but starts to have some skipping issues, it's usually indicative of something called baby's bottom. And basically what that is the nib at its very tip is ground. How in the world am I gonna, okay, so here's your tip of your nib. I've done this demonstration a couple times before, but you have your tip of your nib, here are the two tines, you're looking straight at it here. If the inside is rounded too much like this, it's gonna write very smoothly, but the the capillary action is going to break a little bit. Usually you can tell if it's an issue with baby's bottom if, one, it feels ultra smooth, two, it writes better on more absorbent paper because it's helping to basically like draw the ink out of the pen, and three, if you press down harder and it writes better. That's because you're forcing more ink to come down and it's causing more flow to come through. But if you're writing just with regular pressure, especially on smoother paper, and you're getting some flow issues and stuff, that's usually indicative of baby's bottom. That's the most typical cause. It can be fixed. Honestly, using micro mesh, doing some figure eights on it, can help to kind of like, basically grind down to a very low degree, grind down and allow you to kind of compensate for that gap that you're getting on the nib. I don't know that you're going to want to take your Viscontis and go and doing that, because honestly, when you start doing that kind of stuff, you're voiding your warranty. So this is a kind of situation, especially with a higher end pen, even though they're doing a lot to try to make these nibs as awesome as possible, nib tuning is a very difficult thing to do. So if, specifically for certain types of nibs, usually what you're going to see with the baby's bottom is on broader nibs and stubs and things like that. So it's something that you may or may not be comfortable doing on your own. If you've got an older pen and it's out of warranty and stuff like that, go nuts. Worst case, if you totally screw it up, you can send it to a nibmeister and they can fix it for you, unless you do something just completely insane. So, obviously use caution, use your own judgment here. But baby's bottom is not the most difficult thing in the world to fix, but when you're dealing with higher end pens, it might just be better to contact your retailer that you got it from. If you got it from us, we'll be happy to help you out, or whatever distributor, like for example, Kohl's of London in the US is the Visconti distributor. They handle warranty stuff. So, if, for example, if you bought the pen from us, you can either go through us, which we're happy to do, or you can go directly to Kohl's of London. They are, really focused on Visconti. They can help you out with that level of stuff. We tend to just do exchanges and maybe some troubleshooting stuff, but we don't do grinding and like fixing and that kind of stuff. We're kind of just coordinating all that because, the closer you get to the source with Visconti, the more they're going to be dealing solely with those products and they'll know them a little bit better. So that might be a good way to go, but you got some options there. So I would recommend, depending on what degree it's happening to you and stuff like that, but hopefully that gives you some context there. So the reason it's happening more on the less absorbent papers like rhodia is because it's not helping to kind of assist in the capillary draw of that pen, whereas if you have a more absorbent paper, it's helping to compensate for some of that. So based on what you're saying, I suspect it's probably baby's bottom, which can be fixed on your own, but you may want to contact the higher authorities in this case. Okay? Lev N on Facebook: 2 weeks ago I got myself a Metropolitan Fine. One day I tried flexing the nib. I applied the least pressure and resulted in flexing the nib too much. I of course fixed the alignment and wrote it again. Since then my pen has weird flow, skips, and writes we're then supposed to. Okay, I don't know what exactly that means, but what should I do to fix the nib and flow on my Metro? Well, I'm sorry that happens. It's definitely something, whenever you get into flexing nibs, that's certainly something that is always a potential, no matter what pen you're dealing with. Over flexing, essentially what ends up happening is when you're flexing, you're bending those tines and causing them to spread apart. And there's two things that can happen really as a result of that. One of them is you can bend it too much and the tines can end up, I'm gonna sneeze. Excuse me. How many people just said bless you right now? Anyway, when you're bending those tines, there's two things that can happen. One is the nib could actually, stay together. It could just be bent up and be too far away from the feed, which means that you're not getting proper capillary action. The other thing is your nib could just be kind of split apart like that, which also would cause a break in your capillary action. So either way, you're causing a break in the flow, which is going to cause it to feel scratchy because you're going to have to press on it more. And if the tines are all wacky and misaligned, it can feel scratchy. It's going to cause flow issues, starting issues. It's going to skip. It's going to do stuff like that because you're not getting proper alignment on the slit of that nib, and then it's not mating up properly to your feed. The nice thing about the Metropolitans is that it's relatively easy to pull the nib and feed out of there. And since you've already basically done some stuff to your pen, don't be afraid to take it apart, because what's the worst that you're going to do? You know what I mean? It's already kind of busted. So what you need to do really is you're trying to bend those tines back so that they're together properly and that they're mated down to the feed properly. So it's usually not a feed issue in this kind of situation. It's usually the nib itself. And usually, ideally, you want to try to keep your nib on the feed when you're doing these kinds of adjustments, just because it's easier to make sure that it is done well. But depending on to what degree your stuff is bent out of whack, it can be hard to bend it back in place when you're trying to put it onto the feed, because if you're trying to bend it back down, you may need to kind of overbend it. And if you have the feed in place, you could actually end up bending the tip of your nib over your feed, which would just cause all kinds of more problems. So it might actually be easier to pull your nib off the feed like so, and then taking and just using your fingers, don't use any special tools, you can just kind of take and press down and cause your tines to bend back into place. So you want to make sure that they're bent down so they're mating up properly to the feed itself, so you can kind of just put it down and check and make sure. And one way that you can test this is if you have a piece of paper. You would think I would have one laying around here pretty easily, but if you have a piece of paper and you can take and put it in between your nib and your feed like so. If you can do that very easily, you have too much of a gap. It should be mated on there. It should be a concerted effort. And so like when I have it on there like that, that's good. If it's looser like that, then you've got too much of a gap. So you want to make, that's one way that you can kind of test it pretty easily to see if it's mated on there properly. If it's not, if you can fit that piece of paper in there, take it off, and then kind of bend those tines down a little bit. Then you want to make sure that they're properly aligned. So obviously, usually it helps if you have a loop like so, and then you can kind of inspect it once you have the nib back on the feed. You can inspect and make sure that, like, okay, these tines are looking good, because sometimes they can end up getting whacked out and twisted, and then it's gonna feel scratchy and be all kinds of weird. But looking at it, especially with some sort of magnification like such, you can do that. And then the other thing related to flow is you want to make sure that your slit of your nib is in the right position. Ideally, you want it to be pretty much straightly aligned, maybe slightly turned so that it's angled a bit as it's coming towards the tip. What you don't want is to have it be where, if this is the breather hole right here and this is the tip of the nib, you don't want to have this kind of situation where your nib is, the tip of your nib is going out from where that breather hole is. You want to make sure that it's aligned like this, or ever so slightly bent forward. That's going to assist in the proper capillary flow to allow your ink to come down through the slit of your nib. If you do all that stuff, it should be able to write pretty okay. Now, everything I just explained is, you know, somewhat basic nib 101 type stuff, but it can take a little bit of practice, and you're dealing with like very small, minute movements here. Honestly, the Metropolitan's not a bad pen to practice on because it's a relatively inexpensive one. You know, you've already got a pen that needs some tweaking, so you got nothing to lose really. But for terms of, you know, practicing and stuff like that, I wouldn't maybe pick up your Ogiva and practice on that pen, but this is a pretty decent one to practice on. So, you know, this is a fun thing that you can do messing around with your nibs and whatnot. But that's basically the principle. I know it probably wasn't the simplest explanation of it ever been done, but that's basically what's going on. And that's all I got for this week. So hopefully you, oh no, I got one more question. Sorry, oh my gosh. Sorry, Brittany. Brittany S on Facebook asks, I recently got a TWSBI Eco and the pen will no longer post due to the piston mechanism not going all the way in. Is this a problem with the pen or did I do something wrong? So I'm gonna let you feel really good about yourself if you can figure out what's going on here. What do you think is going on? If you have an Eco, you probably know because you've probably already done this yourself. So I suspect what's probably happened, Brittany, is have you taken the pen apart? That's my go-to question. I'm guessing that you probably have. If you have taken the pen apart, and I'm not blaming you, honestly, this happens to everybody. I have to assemble the thing like 6 times when I do it right. So I'm gonna attempt to do it right now. I'm using a little TWSBI wrench that's included with the Eco, and I'm gonna spin it around and I'm gonna take the mechanism out of the back of the pen, okay? Which happens, these are user serviceable pens, you're meant to be taking them apart and play with. However, when you go to take this part out and you put it back in, if you don't have it in the right orientation, what ends up happening is exactly what I'm gonna show you right now. I think I did it the right way. We'll see if I can intentionally screw it up. Okay, so I'm going to put it back in place, screwing it in place and so on. Okay. It's very hard to intentionally screw things up. Okay, nope, see, I did it the wrong way. I did it so that the piston's not coming up all the way. But if you have it the other way, then essentially what you're going to end up doing is you're going to end up having a piston that's not seated all the way on, which is exactly what you described to me. And specifically with the Eco here, I'm going to try to do this right. Let's see here if I can even... Okay. I think this might do it. All right, we'll see if I can very strategically screw it up. But because of the way that the cap fits onto this particular pen, it has an O-ring right here at the back end of the clear part of the pen. And oh, how'd you like that? I assembled it perfectly. Jeez. When you try to do something wrong, it just ends up working out great, and then you can't. Okay, I know what I need to do to intentionally screw it up. Okay. Okay, I think that'll do it. I'll do it one more time just for good measure. So essentially what I'm doing is I'm putting the thread back in the wrong place so that it's not going to mate up properly. And this is normally very easy to do. I normally don't get it like first shot like this. Okay, so here we go. This will do it. So now I've got it, and I am going to screw it on here. And what's happening is my piston is all the way up here, but my cap is not all the way down mated properly here because I threaded it in the wrong place. And then when I go to put it on, it's, okay, well I didn't do it quite to the extreme, but it's starting to do it now. But basically if the cap is too far up when the piston's all the way up, then it's going to push on the inside of the cap, and it's not going to allow the cap to grab onto this O-ring right here on the end of the pen. And that's what's happening with your pen. I'm 99.9% sure that that's what's going on. So what you need to do, I have another video on this. I'm not going to sit here all day and do this again on the Q&A here, but I have a video called disassembling, or what is it called? TWSBI 580 disassembly. And that is what I think is your answer. So if you do that, then you will have a well-assembled pen. The piston mechanism is exactly the same on the Eco as is on the 580. So I'm not going to try and put this thing back together right now, but if you do that and mess around with it enough, you'll get it back into the right place, and then you'll be able to cap your pen again. I think that's what's going on. So hopefully that works out well for you. All right, that's all the questions I have for this week, since I am going to be missing next week, and next week is going to be Thanksgiving. I know it's not Thanksgiving for everybody. It's an American holiday, but that's what we have going on here anyway. I would like to, you can participate in the question of the week, whether or not you're celebrating Thanksgiving, but basically in the spirit of Thanksgiving, I would just like to know in the comments, what is it that you're thankful for right now? It doesn't have to be fountain pen related, whatever you want to share, but just what are you thankful for? I will say that I am thankful for my family. I have a healthy family. Rachel and I are doing great. My kids are at a really just fantastic age, 3 and 5, soon to be 4 and 6. They're just at such a demanding, but such a very fun and entertaining age. I'm really enjoying it. And I get to do something that I love every day. It's not always easy. I have hard days just like everybody else, for sure. But I still really love what I do. So I'm just very thankful for my life in general, for my faith, my family, and my business. So that's what I'm thankful for this holiday season. So I'd love to know what you're thankful for. So just leave me in the comments. I'd love to hear about it. Thank you so much. I'll be skipping next week. I'll be coming back in December, and right on.